to do all with Deontay Wilder. And I think it's only right that we start off with Deontay Wilder because, well, he's back. He's back in full form. He took a hiatus, deserved the hiatus. You know what I'm saying? He put his soul and, his heart into the ring when it came to the Tyson Fury trilogy. A lot of people were speculating whether or not he'll come back. I was one of those guys who said, what's the reason for him to come back unless it made sense?
You was down. What was Zien saying from the jump?
I didn't doubt it. I said, in order for Wilder to come back.
Was down. You said it's over. He said, what does he got to prove? He does not need to fight no more. I said, bro, he's going to come back.
I'm right. Whoever. But don't you think his reason for coming back aligns with what I've been saying? I said, in order for him to come back, it has to make sense. The money has to be there and the opponents has to be there. Has the heavyweight division been any more on fire than it is now, other than when we were talking about the three-headed monster and everyone had this, we didn't know how good everyone was, but we knew they were good when it comes to Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua. Obviously, that's changed immensely. But I'm like, that. Some could argue the heavyweight division is hotter now than it was when we were like, we need to see the three-headed monsters fight each other. We need to see Tyson Fury fight Anthony Joshua, AJ fight Wilder, like like we were so focused on those three, and we were so just enamored by them. I feel like now when you look at the heavyweight division, we have so many options with fights. It's like it only makes sense for Deontay Wilder to come back. So I'm like, wouldn't you say that kind of aligns with what I've been saying? Is I think if the heavyweight division and look how it looked now, Wilder want to be back.
I disagree. I think the Bomb Squad was always going to come back because he wants that belt, boy.
But which belt? You talking about? He wants to be he wants to be unified, or he's looking for the WBC belt back? Like what specific? Be specific.
Any fight that was going to let him go for another belt, that's where he was going. You see, talking about
like
fight till 40.
Would have came back, period, because he wants to avenge his loss against Fury. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. You don't want to go out like that. That's a fucked up way to go out.
So my point, I feel like we're agreeing to not agreeing to disagree, but I feel like we're agreeing, but we're kind of like saying two different things, but we are agreeing. But what I'm saying is like, I agree with that. He does want to avenge his loss against Tyson Fury. He does want that belt back, but I don't think he would have came back if there wasn't a path clear for him to get it. So now with AJ defending, because I'm like, I feel like everything mattered around this AJ versus Usyk fight. Yes, Deontay Wilder announced his comeback before the AJ Usyk fight, but let's be real. Majority of boxing heads said Usyk is going to beat AJ the second time. And if Usyk is able to beat AJ the second time, what does that mean? The heavyweight division is wide open because most likely they're going to try and do Usyk versus Tyson Fury. Now AJ is sitting in the looms chilling. Ruiz finally was like, hey, I'll fight you, Luis Ortiz. And a lot of you guys, and we'll get into that later. You know what I'm saying? I think it's going to be a hell of a fight, but let's not act like Andy Ruiz was ducking that fight for a very long time. And let's not act like he got forced into it. He didn't get forced into this fight. A lot of people are overlooking this. He signed a Triller fight with Tyrone Spong. He was trying to get out of this. Luis Ortiz called him out. He said, how the fuck you going to sign that? And we already had a fight agreement. So Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz has finally happened. How long have we been speculating that? A year and a half almost? Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce has finally happened. How long have we been speculating that? Maybe about 6 to 7 months. Right? And then we have Deontay Wilder having his return. So I'm like, the way that I see it, and then Daniel Dubois, man, he's talking about he wants to fight Dillian Wyatt or something like that. I'm like, the heavyweight division is so wide open, and the possibility of Deontay Wilder having that Tyson Fury fourth fight is a lot more feasible. It's a lot more plausible now than it was beforehand. So I think it's all strategic. That's my personal opinion. Like, I feel like we're agreeing, but we're kind of like we're seeing in two different perspectives, but we're kind of agreeing on the end goal where it's like Wilder sees, all right, here's my opportunity to get my fourth fight with Tyson Fury and also get my belt back. But if that wasn't there, he probably wouldn't have came back, or at least he would have waited until the timing was right, if it ever came, if the timing was ever right. My personal opinion. I don't know.
It's just crazy because Joshua can't beat none of these dudes, man. He can't beat Wilder, can't beat Fury. If he can't beat Usyk, he can't beat them too.
Okay, but we can also argue this as well. AJ still has clout behind him. AJ still has people that will watch him because they love him, and he also has people that will watch him because they hate him, right? So with that being the case, does he have to necessarily fight after this loss to Usyk? It's not like he has to get back in there with a somebody where it was like, oh, it's going to be a close fight. He doesn't really have to do that. AJ can take this stance of where I can wait back in the reins or in the, you know, in the background. I can see what's the most plausible fight for me or what makes the most sense, what makes the most money, and I can just go after that. I'm like, it's not like AJ's in a bad spot where it's like you have to work your way back up to be looked at for a title shot. Like, you know what I'm saying? This isn't, you know, MMA. You feel me? He's in a position where, yeah, he took the L, but in all honesty, like, if he wanted to, he could fight the Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce winner. And honestly, if he really wanted to, he could. Yeah, I know he doesn't, but if he wanted to, he can do it Dillian White trilogy.